Thank you everybody so much for joining us. I am really excited actually to have this call on Discord. I think it really is a nice change of pace. With the audio figured out, my own audio anyway, hopefully everything else goes smoothly. I'll start with a few community updates. First being a new proposal we have in governance. Actually, I see Howard is here. He's going to join us and give us a quick TLDR on his proposal. Howard, let me go ahead and bring you up here. Let's see. Okay, you should be able to speak. Where are you, Howard?
I think he has his hands raised up. Let me bring him up here.
He did, and I brought him up. I've invited him to speak with his hand up. Okay, cool.
There he is. Yeah.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear? All right, very good. Thanks again for the opportunity to take a moment of the call to discuss the proposal. I won't take long. I'll be respectful of everyone's time. And I apologize in advance if there's any background noise. We're headed into the city for a Cub Scout event, and we're tight on time. But again, thanks again. So to my background, I'm Howard Krieger, CEO of Unfederal Reserve. We're a Web3 DeFi company. We have 3 products that are up and running. One is a retail pool-to-peer platform that is a compound fork on steroids, where we've taken it, wrapped a real robust front end around it, maintain U.S. regulatory compliance. We're registered with FinCEN as a general entity. We have AML, BSA compliance rules that we follow, even though the platform is completely self-custodial. So it's almost like we are acting in a manner that is of greater regulatory compliance than we are required to, just on the off chance that kind of comes around and becomes more of an issue going forward. We also have a bridge that allows folks with crypto to invest in private equity investments. And we have an institutional version of our pool-to-peer that is currently in Brinkby with a partner bank out of Puerto Rico. Our retail platform has had over 700 million in flows, over 10,000 customers, 30,000 transactions without incident. And we've had multiple security audits, including one by Trail of Bits, which for folks that are in the security smart contract audit space, recognize Trail of Bits as the preeminent provider of such reports. Our actual report is available in the proposal. Again, we've been fans of Bancor for a long time. We even had a team sit down with the Bancor folks in Miami about a year ago to discuss collaboration. We were pointed to the DAO to move forward. And at a high level, we feel like the future is customer acquisition and brand stickiness. And that means offering customers more than just the ability to swap tokens and maybe stake into some pools, but also allow them to save their deposits, borrow on an over-collateralized basis at reasonable rates, and even use the pool-to-peer mechanics to short tokens. We only want as collateral tier 1 tokens so that we don't have the price volatility. And I encourage everybody to go to the proposal, like, comment, ask questions, and engage. Our hope is to have the vote, or our goal is to have the vote next Sunday, and we'd love to see a quorum come out in support. Again, we're fans of Bancor. We love the mission. We think there's a lot of alignment. So the TLDR, very briefly, is we propose to build, launch, maintain Bancor P2P, a savings, lending, and borrowing tool that will integrate into the Bancor ecosystem. We're paying the development fees ourselves and the maintenance costs because it's really an expansion of what we're doing already. So it's not a big lift for us to make these changes and maintain the new product. And our plan is from the revenue the platform generates to pay the Bancor DAO 10% of our revenue top line. So before any expenses, any dollar for dollar, any revenue we receive from our borrowers, 10 cents on the dollar of that revenue goes to Bancor, and then we take care of the expenses and all the other fun stuff, taxes on the back end. Our request of Bancor is that they provide us a URL if possible, so that customers have a seamless Bancor experience, even in that little line at the top of their browser. And we ask that hyperlinks be added to the Bancor site, and we'll do the same, obviously, so people feel like they're having a one brand experience with Bancor. And then we ask, obviously, collaboration and advertising. We have tutorials available on how to use Pool2P and swap or Pool2Peer and swap technology to maximize the user's experience. And we bring 200 years plus of consumer and commercial lending experience to the platform to make this the first and last stop for retail users. Thank you again for your time. And I'll take any questions offline so the other agenda items can be met.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Howard. Appreciate it. Like you said, the discussion is up there, the proposal's up there in discourse. If anyone has any questions or comments they want to add to it, he's also been active in all of our channels, so you should see some of his messages in there. Moving on, again, thank you, Howard. We've invited, absolutely, Almanac to join us as well to give us an update on their recommendations and implementations. I see Lars has his hand up. Lars, Almanac, give me just 1 second.
There we go. Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. How about yourself?
Well, thanks.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, my name is Lars. I'm CTO at Almanac, and here to give an update on the optimizations and recommendations that we are supplying Bancor with. So I think first of all, is we to start with kind of like a TLDR of what it is that we do, and after that go into like kind of like an update of where we are at the moment. So we've engaged the DAO to supply them with recommendations for a couple of parameters to, as a goal, reduce the impairment loss and improve the revenue that the protocol is generating. So what that means is that on a daily basis, Almanac supplies Bancor and the Bancor team with parameter settings for some of the bigger pools on the protocol for V3. And recommendations would include the size of the trading liquidity and the swap fee for trading on that specific pool. So this is what Almanac does and what Almanac does for Bancor. And as kind of like an update to kind of move directly into that. So first of all, maybe an apology on kind of like our estimation of the timeline. So for the ones of you that know, we originally estimated to start supplying the DAO with the recommendations starting November 1st. And we have failed to meet that deadline. So let's make that very clear. We have been running tests all the way up until that deadline of November 1st. And have decided not to proceed with supplying recommendations starting November 1st, but instead delay that kind of like deadline by 2 weeks. The reason for that is that prior to that November 1st, we have been running tests on the recommendations that we give out, which is a very
Anybody else lose him, or is it just me? Oh, you're back.
Oh, apologies. Where did you lose me?
It
Right
was only
after
for
recommendations.
Thank you.
Right. So the recommendations that we give out are mainly for trading liquidity and the fees per pool. And what we've been doing so far up until the deadline of November 1st is testing our system. So obviously we've been shadow running our system, supplying recommendations on a daily basis up until November 1st. And what we've noticed over the past few days leading up to the deadline is that our monitoring tools, kind of like our statistical tests that we run to make sure that our recommendations make sense, started ringing their alarm bells, which means that the recommendations that were coming out of our systems were, more aggressive than usually we would like them to be. like this is kind of what we have these tests for, right? To make sure that the numbers that come out of that system make sense, and kind of like have them there as a security check. And the fact that those alarm bells went off kind of forced us to delay the giving out of the recommendations until we've actually found out what is the cause of that. We think we have identified that cause, so we kind of know why our recommendations have been more aggressive than they have been over the past few weeks, and are actively working to resolve that. But that means that we were not comfortable sharing those numbers with the DAO yet, which is why we shared with you guys on November, I think it was on November 2nd, that we would be delaying these recommendations. So again, apologies to the DAO. We had set out a timeline for ourselves. We unfortunately have not been able to execute on that timeline, but we're committed to delivering those recommendations starting November 14th. And we're very excited to continue with that and to see the positive results that would come from that. And obviously, if there's any questions regarding any of the the process that we're currently going through, or maybe some deeper elaboration on what's actually the reason for these numbers being overly aggressive, obviously more than happy to answer any questions there.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully that's all sorted out and we can get that going on the 14th then. Appreciate you joining us. Tyler, if you want to give us an update on the migration process and maybe just some things going on with the DAO here.
Yeah, I think Lars was a great segue into this. But I'm very happy to, first of all, join the first Discord community call. Excited for this. And I'm happy to say the migration proposal has passed. And I wanted to thank InfoParity for working quite a lot on the proposal, and thank you the Bancor community for making it pass. I think it's a pretty big moment for the project and the DAO process overall. This is why I'm in this market. This is what decentralization and governance looks like. And there's still a lot of work to do on this front, but there are efforts underway now to strengthen the DAO and its role within the Bancor ecosystem. So I'll speak to that more. But first, I just wanted to give a very easy to understand explanation of the migration plan, because I still see a couple questions in our communication channels about it. So quite simply, this Wednesday, November 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the window to migrate from V2.1 to V3 will open. So if you have any funds on V2.1 and you want to migrate to V3, you will need to do it before next Wednesday, November 6th at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So next Wednesday, sorry?
No, November 16th. I think you said November 6th. Obviously, I think today's the 6th.
Maybe I cut out. Yeah, maybe I cut out.
Okay.
November 16th is the deadline. So if you want to migrate to V3 from V2.1, you will need to do it before Wednesday, November 16th. And if you know of anyone with funds on V2.1, please, help us spread the word. We're obviously going to try to communicate this as much as possible. It's our pinned messages in Telegram and Discord. But again, it's pretty important. However, if you want to just stay in V2.1, you can do that as well. But after next Wednesday, November 16th, only withdrawals will be supported on V2.1. So again, any further questions on that, feel free to hit us up on our channels, or direct message is fine as well. Prior to the migration, we'll be sharing fresh numbers on protocol and liquidity and stats in the discourse channel that we've been posting those numbers in. So that's that. And then as far as DAO updates go beyond that, we mentioned a few months ago that we were interested in establishing some kind of a DAO treasury, just understanding how we can perhaps bootstrap the DAO with funds, or just giving the DAO more control over the certain operations that happen within the project. This is not an easy, quick process. It's something that will take time, but we have engaged certain parties to seriously research this and advise us on how to make this happen. And we basically have kind of a wish list of items that we want to understand, which includes, can the DAO own licensing and patents? Can the DAO have a treasury that it operates and is like independent from what contributors are doing, and just understanding what kind of implications there are for that setup. So it's still pretty vague, but I hope to have more updates on this, soon. But again, these aren't really promises, but it's something that everybody feels strongly for within the community, and I'd love to see that happen. So I hope the next update is a little bit more specific and there's direction there. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it up to the parties that we have contracted to advise us on that before I can say anything further. And that's all I got, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tyler. And if anybody has any questions about those, anything Tyler had mentioned, obviously reach out to us in any of the channels and keep an eye out on the discourse conversation, the discussion that's been ongoing in terms of the migration. Like he said, fresh numbers will be up there prior to the migration of the protocol owned liquidity. That brings us to Mark. Mark, I know on the last community call, you said you wanted to wait to discuss the new product until we had reference materials that were released and kind of in all of our hands. The light paper is not out yet. I'm hoping maybe you can give us any sort of an update or anything at all you might be able to tell us about the new product in the meantime.
Yeah, sure. So the light paper and white paper are very close to completion. And so, I think that we can sort of renege on that, what we said last week, and just go ahead and start discussing the product in today's call, as kind of a prelude to having these documents published with blog posts and everything in the coming few days.
But you're good discussing the new product? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Let's just go ahead and start discussing it.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe we pick up where we left off on the last community call then with the two sections of the patent, or is there a different way you'd like to?
Well, yeah, like maybe I'll start with like a little background. And so essentially how this, where this thing came from was during the research that I was doing in essentially how to change the bonding curves that we have on version 3 so that we can sort of better manage the the liabilities and stuff there. I ended up sort of rethinking some of the rules, like the preset sort of assumptions that we have about how AMMs should behave. And so, like, one of the things that sort of that occurred to me during that time, it certainly has occurred to many others in the industry, is that the problem that we have with DEXs is that users are essentially, they're handed a prescription, right? A literal trading strategy prescription by the protocol that they have to abide by and respect. And so what we've really got, right, across the industry for AMMs is a preset trading strategy that users subscribe to. And if you want to change some of those settings or something, you don't really have access to that. And so it's really a take it or leave it type of product. And so the product that we've developed is kind of contesting that. So the background there is that, I don't really like this paradigm where liquidity providers, as trading strategists, are told that there's only one trading strategy that they can use. And so what I've tried to develop is, what we're developing as a group, is a way that the user instead tells the protocol what their trading preferences are, and the protocol has to respect that. So it's kind of flipping the existing paradigm upside down a little bit.
Okay, so you're kind of referring to LPs as traders then here, but I see them as two different things. Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we've had this conversation sort of many times before, but yeah, the liquidity providers are traders. It's just that they are trading a very specific profile. And so the standard constant product trading profile is essentially that what you're hoping for is that the two tokens that you are providing liquidity with essentially go nowhere in price, right? But it trades nowhere but sideways over long periods of time. And so in that sense, you're short the gamma, right? This is the one way that you can hear it discussed, and it certainly has been featured in many technical documents surrounding AMMs, including our own. So you're short the gamma and you're long the fees. And everyone kind of already, I think, has a fairly implicit understanding of this concept. That if you're providing liquidity with, let's say, ETH and WBTC, what you're praying for as a liquidity provider is that at the end of your liquidity provision, that the prices of both of those tokens relative to each other hasn't really changed. And that is a very, very narrow type of trading strategy to be participating in. And in many ways, it's kind of the antithesis of the most basic form of economic agency that people usually have when it comes to trading different assets against each other. And I would say that it's the minority. In general, people try to buy stuff when the value is low and sell it when the exchange rate is more favorable. And so what we've created is what we call adjustable bonding curves that empower user strategies using something that we're calling asymmetric liquidity pools. And so this is very, very different from traditional AMMs in a couple of ways, but the most significant one is that if you consider the quintessential AMM, where you're providing liquidity for a certain pair, when it is buying, when users are trading against your liquidity, let's say that it moves the price of one of those tokens up. If someone else then wants to trade against your liquidity pool in the other direction, they can at essentially the same price, right? It's like saying if I bought ETH at 1,500, then I have to sell it at 1,500, and this is sort of mandated by the protocol that you're interacting with. What we're doing with asymmetric liquidity pools is allowing you to change those two prices. So if someone says that if someone says, I want to buy my ETH at 1,500 and I'm happy to pay that price, but I only want to sell it again after its price gets to 5,000, then that's a strategy that we can now implement in the new system, and it has it has the ability to accommodate an infinite set of different user strategies simultaneously. So it's no longer the case that you're only offered this one particular trading profile, which is the provide liquidity, cross your fingers, and pray that the price doesn't go anywhere. But you can now actually take an informed position, right? You can exercise your agency as an independent cell inside the system, where you choose where your tokens are bought and sold. And this is fairly unique in the way that we've done it. And I think that that there's going to be more than a few really interesting surprises when people start to dig into the software and see how the details of this thing start playing out.
Okay, so let me see if I'm understanding this, and you tell me if I'm mistaken, right? So these adjustable bonding curves, they have parameters, so to speak, that I, as an LP, would set myself. And now I'm not obligated to what you were saying earlier in terms of buying and selling at that same exchange rate. I can decide my own and create my own trading strategy. I'm not strictly set.
So we're used to thinking of token pairs being traded on the same bonding curve. And this is an arbitrary decision. It was never a requirement of an AMM to have one bonding curve per two tokens. And so what we're allowing now is for each token that you provide to have its own bonding curve versus an arbitrary pair. So for example, you can say, I'm going to provide, I want to create a strategy with USDC and ETH. and I want my USDC to be exchanged for ETH between a certain price range, right? Let's say, between 1,500 and 1,000 if we're expecting ETH to go down. And that might be, that uses specific accumulation range. Now, when they do that, the ETH that they are garnering on that particular position, right? So as the USDC is being sold over that range, it immediately appears in their other bonding curve, right? On their ETH specific bonding curve. And that bonding curve can have entirely different parameters compared to their first one. And this allows you to do all kinds of things. The way that we've set up these adjustable bonding curves means that there's like actually an infinite family of potential trading strategies that users can use to describe what it is that their intentions are, including having a fixed price. So you might not be able to there will be users that are very specific in their targets. So for example, I want to sell my USDC for ETH at exactly 1,000. You can do that for all of your USDC, right? So so that every single USDC in that particular bonding curve is exchanged for ETH at the same price, right? So it's not even a curve at all. It's actually more like a straight line. And you can do the same thing on the other side. You can have all of your ETH be exchanged back for USDC when the rate is 5,000 instead of 1,000. And so what this allows you to do is to choose, which parts of the price chart, you want your strategy deployed across. And then the way that strategy evolves is entirely under your own governance, right? It is the natural expression of your bias, right? Your inclination on which direction the markets might move. And this is, it's very empowering, right? It's very individualized. All the protocol does is respect whatever your wishes are. It doesn't give you, some generic representation of what it thinks you should do, which is which stands in stark contrast to what the rest of the industry is doing. It's important to realize that when I'm saying that when your ETH is being exchanged for USDC and vice versa, that these are irreversible, right? So on a traditional AMM, you can put your liquidity on the curve at a certain point in the market, or if you're talking about an AMM like Uniswap v3 or like Trader Joe, you can still you can concentrate your liquidity within a certain price range. But even when your liquidity is there, it's still there reversibly. So if the price of ETH moves in a certain direction, it can also move back the other direction, and you'll always be left with the losing trade, right? This is the defining property of AMMs and the paradigm established in DeFi. And I think that that's the problem. So what we want is a system where a trade in one direction cannot be reversed, right? If you are agreeing to sell your ETH at $5,000, that someone can't reverse that decision on you. Imagine if you sold your house, for example, right, for, I don't know, like $500,000 or something, and you agreed, right, to sell your house for $500,000. And then immediately after that transaction, someone says, oh, actually, I want to give you your house back and you have to give me my money back, right? That's not how it works. After the contracts are signed and after the assets have exchanged hands, it requires it generally requires those two people to then find another agreement at which you would exchange those assets back. So if you're flipping houses, right, your whole purpose in life is to try and find houses at a low price, buy them from people that are trying to get rid of them quickly, and then sell them later on when people are desperate to buy houses again. And in a way, trading tokens is exactly the same thing. And so what we've built is a system that organizes and automates that behavior, so that you don't have to constantly interact with your position. So you can just set up your parameters the way that you want, define your strategy, and it will continuously trade between either halves, right? So have these two adjustable bonding curves, irreversibly interacting with the market. constantly feeding into each other. And this means that after you set it up, you don't need to sort of actively manage your position. You don't need to constantly go and move liquidity around. You don't need to withdraw positions and recontribute tokens to different ranges or anything like that. It's defined very, very simply. Now, the major challenge, by the way, to getting something like this set up is things like matching and routing algorithms. And this is obviously something that we had to spend a lot of time on, and very pleased to report that we've found a highly gas efficient method of doing it. And so there's really nothing to stop this from moving forward. I think it's a very exciting new direction to take the whole concept of AMMs.
Completely new concept. So tell me, okay, so basically two independent curves, like two of these asymmetric, or like two of these curves, right? Adjustable bonding curves. They're independent of each other, but kind of linked together. So one, I set the parameters and I can accumulate a token in the first curve. And like you said, with your housing example, I can buy them lower. So like a buy low, sell high sort of strategy, right? And then the second curve, I can set my parameters a little bit higher. They kind of speak to each other. And now I've just created my first strategy.
Well, yeah,
is that
exactly.
Right?
And so you can think of one curve as being the buy low curve and the other curve as being the sell high curve. So imagine, one of the things that you might do is say, I've got all of this USDC, and I know that we're in a bear market, and so I'm expecting, the price of something to do something. One of the things I've been paying attention to is all of these traders on Twitter, and who have enormous followings, including some with their own YouTube channels and things like that. And I've been watching the types of the kinds of things that they say, the way that they interact and view the market, and what a product would be like. That is a sort of a natural extension of the things that they're already doing. So, for example, just recently there was someone who quite famously called the top of Bitcoin and ETH in the last cycle. And what he has suggested to his followers is that he's expecting after the next interest rate hike, that there's probably going to be a brief rally in Bitcoin to a certain price target. Now, he doesn't necessarily know exactly where that price target is, but he knows the range, right? The approximate price target. And then after it reaches that price target, he's expecting the price of BTC to find new lows. Now, I have no idea if this is going to play out or not, and I'm not, I don't want anyone on the call to think that I'm speculating on the price of Bitcoin here. I'm just reiterating the kinds of things that he said. Now, on a traditional centralized exchange, how he would be setting up, his position to prepare for this anticipated change in the markets was that he would be basically putting an order to sell Bitcoin at this target. Now, as I said before, you can never really, these traders know that they can never predict the exact price of where something's going to get to. And so what he might do is break up his order into several smaller ones. Maybe he'll sell some at when Bitcoin is 20,000, some when Bitcoin is 21,000, some when Bitcoin is 22,000, so on. And then after those orders are being fulfilled, he's then going to take the proceeds from those sales and then move it through his low price targets for BTC, right? So if he's expecting BTC to go to, I don't know, 15,000, 12,000, whatever it happens to be, I can't remember what his particular call was. But that's where he's putting his USD liquidity to rebuy the BTC that he just sold, right? So this is, sometimes called a sell high, buy low strategy, and it's essentially the same thing. So this allows him to, to act on the instinct that he has for what the market is going to do. Now, the problem there, and I think that some of the friction that you can appreciate just in my, rendition of what you would have to do on a centralized exchange is, firstly, that if you can't choose the exact price, then you need to set up a bunch of orders first for when you want the BTC to be sold. And you need to come back and revisit those orders all the time to collect the proceeds of those sales in order to set up your other orders as the BTC price moves further down. Whereas in the system that we've set up, you can actually just express exactly, what the range is that you're hoping to sell your BTC at, and the range that you're hoping to rebuy it at. And even though the first order, right, the sale of the BTC hasn't happened yet, the future proceeds from the sale of BTC in that particular price range automatically appear in your rebuy range. And this is what we mean by linked curves. Each curve has its own token associated with it, right? One with BTC or WBTC, and the other one with USDC or DAI or whatever it happens to be. And as BTC is being converted into DAI, the DAI balance on your other order is increasing. And so there's no need to sort of come back all the time and make sure that everything is going according to plan. You don't have to interact with the contract more frequently, which is obviously something that has held back, I think, a lot of institutional use of AMMs, because the gas costs of how complicated their strategies are and how often they have to interact with AMMs is prohibitive. So being able to do this and not have to pay any gas, right? To just have the strategy that you wanted to execute automatically and gaslessly, execute for you, while you just, while you pay attention to it from a distance, is immensely powerful. And it could be sort of one of the major bottlenecks alleviated to bring in some more of that, the big institutions, I think, especially, trading firms and other things. But we'll see. It is an entirely different approach. It doesn't look anything like a traditional AMM. It has certain parallels between things like Uniswap V3 and Kyber DMM and the new Trader Joe system. But it stands alone, right? When I said it has parallels, all I mean is that mathematically you can show that some of the bonding curves look similar under certain situations. But the way that the trading strategies, the actual trading strategy product that we've developed behaves is entirely unique. I haven't seen anything else like it elsewhere in the industry. One thing that I should raise as well is that due to the nature of the irreversible trade, right? Because all of these, adjustable bonding curves supply these automated range trading strategies. The system itself for traders becomes sort of resistant or highly resilient against the most common type of MEV attack strategies. So things like sandwich attacks will no longer work in a system like this, because a lot of those MEV tactics take advantage of the fact that an AMM is symmetric in the way that it deploys its liquidity, right? They can afford to process a massive trade in front of yours because they know that after you've traded whatever your trade is, that they can trade it back and get a full refund for their trade in the opposite direction. Whereas in this case, they can't sandwich attack you, because if they did, front run your trade, they have no way of reversing it, which means that all trades in the system have to be sincere. And that's I think, it helps to alleviate another one of the things that I think has been, poisoning DeFi for a long time, which is this kind of malicious trading behavior where, sophisticated, contract developers have taken advantage of naive DeFi users. So the fact that the system is out of the box, MEV resisted, I think is extremely important, and I wanted to raise that as well.
Mark, thank you so much. I have a question regarding the curves. So the examples that you were giving, it was 2 curves, but if I just want to use one curve and just accumulate and DCA into a position, am I able to do that?
Yeah. If you really want to. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that to get the full power of the system that's being designed, you want to be deploying two curves and using that to your advantage. But no, if you decide that you only want to, for example, sell your ETH when it finally reaches $20,000, then you can do that, right? You can say, here's my ETH, and I've been saving it for a long time, and I've been waiting for a price target somewhere in the range of $18,000 to $20,000. If you want to, you can create a strategy that just sells ETH between $18,000 and $20,000. And importantly, if it just happens to spike into that range briefly, right, where maybe you call it perfectly after all these years, and the price of ETH tops out exactly there, but it only stays there for 5 minutes, and maybe you're not at your computer in time to withdraw your liquidity. If this was on another AMM, that's fine, because the trade that happens against your position is irreversible, right? Whatever money you make for selling your ETH at that range is yours to keep, and no one can trade it back the other direction as the price begins to fall again. So yeah, if you want to, you can use it as a normal order book, right? A simple one-directional order book. But it's all of, I don't think order books are all that interesting. We kind of get order book status for free with all of this other, technology that we're introducing into that concept.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know originally I had asked you if you would be willing to do a DAO discussion, and it was more of a technical deep dive, but maybe rather than that, once we have some technical docs, or at least some more documentation released, maybe we can get into a little bit more depth and engage with the community. I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of questions now that you've given us more of an idea of what the product is with this explanation. It's kind of a lot to take in, right? So once we have that and questions, would you get on a DAO discussion and kind of go over all of that with all of us some more?
Yeah, of course. And I think that, the reason why we didn't speak about it, the reason I didn't want to speak about it, or chose not to speak about it, let's say it that way. So I wanted to start speaking about this stuff 2 weeks ago. The reason I decided not to was because I think that it helps to have documentation and stuff out so that people can actually, have something in front of them and read it and not just have to rely on, the soliloquy that I give on one of these calls. And I think that it would be appropriate to treat this as kind of just a very quick introduction to the concept. And after some of these documents are out, and we've got I think there's 3 of them or something in preparation right now. After that stuff is available, that absolutely, I think it's not just it wouldn't just be helpful. I think it's necessary that we follow up this call with something like a DAO discussion on Discord, where we can dig into more of the details. It might even make sense to split it up to have something that's a little bit more product focused, DAO focused, DeFi user focused, that kind of thing, where we can start talking about what the protocol means, right, and what it feels like to interact with it, and what it empowers users to achieve. And then to have another one with the nascent developer and mathematician population who actually want to know more about how the matching algorithm works to perform trades. How do you route a trade through a system that has no generic swap algorithm underpinning it, because it is an interesting question. And then also, how are the bonding curves defined, and how do the contracts behave? So I think that there's so much to talk about, and I'm looking forward to doing it. We don't even have to do it just on 2 calls. Obviously, this is going to be a continuing thing. And then as we start approaching proposal time, I think that it's really important that we maintain an open dialogue and give the community as much space as they need to opine and request information and participate in this discussion before we actually vote on it and launch it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Depending, going by like the key components of this new product, we'll almost have somewhat of like a series, I guess, of DAO discussions. Awesome. Thank you so much for getting into that. I wasn't expecting it today. And I mean, obviously it would be helpful when we have that documentation, but just to hear about the new product and to be able to learn what it actually consists of is definitely super exciting. So thank you so much for getting into all of that and giving us some information on it, as much as you're able to at the moment.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else that you want to add to it? Otherwise, we'll wait for those docs to be released and then we can go ahead and schedule our first DAO discussion.
No, I think I'll leave it there. I think I will say that if there's anyone on the call that is interested in seeing, in seeing some of these bonding curves and things, I've got some like Desmos links and stuff that I can share with you. If you wanted to, get your feet sunk into it early before we start having those calls, then let me know. But otherwise, I think we should just save a lot of that material for when we have the DAO focused discussions.
Great, will do. Thank you so much again. And I know Howard dropped, but nice to have him up here, go over the proposal, and Lars from Almanac. Thank you so much, Tyler. Appreciate you getting up and giving us the updates and the breakdown of the migration process. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quick, like I know 2 weeks ago I brought this up, but the product that Mark and Jen were just discussing will not be called Bancor. It'll have its own nomenclature, and so be prepared to join some other channels and all that. But we'll be releasing that information shortly, along with the light paper and the other educational content that Jen and Mark were just discussing.
Cool. Thanks, Tyler. And again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to the DAO discussion, hearing everybody's questions. I know I have some more of my own. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.